Welcome to Back from the Abyss. I'm Dr. Craig Heacock. Today we hear the conclusion of Saj's journey to heal his early childhood neglect and broken attachment. If you haven't yet listened to part 1, stop right here and do so. Otherwise you will be stepping right into the middle of a very complicated story. In part 1, Saj detailed his years of psychological work, including psychotherapy, somatic or body-centered therapies, cannabis and ketamine-assisted therapy, and finally MDMA. Part 1 ended with Saj describing his MDMA experience, and Part 2 continues with Saj exploring this pivotal MDMA session, then moves on to his deepest and most difficult work of all, a high-dose psilocybin session at a treatment center in the Netherlands.
I didn't realize even then that my childhood was so different from other people's childhood. Since then I have. Mm-hmm. Since then, we'll talk about this later, but I've been in Amsterdam doing some work there and doing ceremony work there. And the other people that I talked to would say something like, "Oh yeah, I know this place. This reminds me of my childhood." And I would look at them, I was like, "This doesn't remind me of anything." Mm. Yeah. And so it's just like, even now,
That sounds so beautiful. In that first session, the MDMA session, do you remember the therapist playing much of a key role, or was it really the medicine and your inner work, and they were holding the space for you?
No, at different points they played different roles, right? At some point it was much more internally focused and what was happening there, and then at other times it was incredibly relational. Like I could tell you, my sense of where they were in their room, I was tracking their breathing. I was tracking what I knew was their internal states, what I thought their belief systems were about me, how they felt about me. So, all of these, whether that was accurate or not, I don't know, but it felt like my empathy radar was on very high.
Yeah. Did you have a male-female therapist?
I did, yeah.
In that first session, did you have any maternal transference with the female therapist?
I think not in the first session, only because it was just even having that possibility of opening up a mom thing was just even too deep for that first session. Mm-hmm. So it went to a lot of places, but it didn't go there. Mm-hmm. I would say if there is one big contribution, one big piece to take away from, I think, all of the experience that I've had with this path, it would be that the body is essential to healing. It is an essential ally in processing, whether you're doing that without the aid of psychedelic medicines, but particularly with the aid of psychedelic medicines. I'll put it this way, that the tip of the iceberg, cognitive, rational consciousness that most of us in the Western world think that we are, right? We identify as our thoughts, our stories, our belief systems. That is not nearly the entire picture. There is this profound piece of the iceberg, 90% of the iceberg floating underneath the surface of the water that we cannot see, that we have little bits of access to in dreams. And when the revelations and the programming from that start to really emerge to the surface that you can feel and engage with, if all you're working with is that tip of the iceberg consciousness and cognitive understanding to try and deal with that, I think the circuits get blown on that part of our brains very quickly. I guess what I'm saying here is that I have never known anybody to talk their way out of anxiety or talk their way out of depression or panic attacks. I think you can, manage those things with some kind of cognitive understanding, but I've only seen people feel their way through anxiety and panic and depression. And so the body is essential for me in that. I think, that the body is where we're holding that kind of reactivity, and I think the body is the pathway to ultimately process it. I think the body is so much more efficient at processing those types of experiences. Mm-hmm. We saw this with MDMA, and we see it with cannabis and ketamine, that people can talk their way through a psychedelic psychotherapy session. I think they're not receiving the majority of the benefit of that path, mm-hmm. if they don't have sort of a solid pathway for the body to engage with. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your decision to go to the Netherlands and to do psilocybin work, and how your treatment journey reached that point, and what happened there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll say it didn't start out as being part of my treatment journey. It started out as being, a sense that, okay, the psilocybin is starting to be really looked at here, and there's some decriminalization efforts. So, us already working with psychedelics, we want to know a little bit more about this medicine. And the only way we could do that, not being part of an FDA trial in the US, is to go someplace and work with it where it's completely legal. So I set up shop in Amsterdam for 2.5 months. And we had people fly from the US to go there and receive treatments. And I interviewed other clinicians there that were working with psilocybin. So that's how it started, right? It was really just sort of a pilot program to see.
First, you weren't even necessarily thinking that you were going to go do trauma work there.
No.
You personally, no.
I wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought like, oh, no, I'm feeling pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't start out that way. And we did find out some really interesting things about it.
What did you discover?
Well, I will say that psilocybin is an incredible medicine, but it is also an advanced medicine. So we had a number of people that had a complete non-response to the psilocybin, regardless of the dose that they took. I mean, we had people take, a moderate dose all the way up to very high doses, and they had a complete non-response. And
you mean they didn't feel the effect of the drug?
Yeah.
Wow.
What it would do is give them images of flowers, of water, of rivers, of psychedelic distortions, a little bit of color maybe or something like that, but nothing that kind of tied into their core structure, nothing that like was meaningful in any real way. It was just kind of like a pleasant show, that kind of thing. And then
this wasn't dissociative opioid blockade.
No, I think it was.
Oh, you think it was?
I think that's what exactly was going on with it. I think that, from that experience and then interviewing a number of clinicians there, and also talking to the main psychologists at Imperial College that they're running the psilocybin trials in the UK, I think we're finding very similar things, which is that if people have a foundation of health, a foundation of ego integrity, and, if their nervous system is not loaded up with dissociation, I think psilocybin can really go to work with them. But if they're coming to the table with that as their structure, I think that's the person that psilocybin is just going to pass over completely without doing much of anything. So a quick story here. So, between psilocybin doses, you need to give at least a few days, right? And so we gave the people, especially the people that had a non-response to psilocybin, we gave them the opportunity to do cannabis-assisted therapy. And what we found is exactly what we were talking about before, that the cannabis digs in and it cracks dissociation in a very great way. And so we had people who, chose to not go back to psilocybin. They just continued to stay with the cannabis work, even in the Netherlands, right? So, I mean, just get that. These are people that went through the time and expense and effort to fly to Europe to do these psilocybin sessions, and they ended up staying with the cannabis work, simply because I think the cannabis therapy met them where they were, versus the psilocybin therapy was a little too advanced for what they were going to, what they were capable of. I think the psilocybin, the potential of psilocybin is far more profound, but it needs a solid foundation to work on.
And by that, I mean a solid foundation of sort of ego strength, attachment health, lack of dissociation.
I think you don't need attachment health. I think ego strength, lack of dissociation, what I would call a person's level 1 foundational work needs to be in place.
Yeah.
And then if it is, then I think, psilocybin will do its thing.
Yeah. And that seems such an important point, because if psilocybin is going to come online medically, as it seems like it is, some of the most treatment-resistant people are going to seek it out. And surprise, surprise, a big percentage of them have trauma with dissociation. Yeah. And as you're seeing, they may get little to no benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done the early scaffolding work, whether somatic work with or without other psychedelics.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's true. And that's not to say that psilocybin wouldn't be very useful for them in the future. I'm just saying, like, I think what we're seeing is a stepwise progression where there are sort of a level 1 introductory psychedelics, something like MDMA, cannabis, ketamine, that can really help you get your foundation in place. And then there's a level 2 psychedelics like psilocybin. So one other way I would characterize the difference there is that, MDMA works with the events in your life. Cannabis works with the events in your life. Versus psilocybin works with the fabric of reality that got created based on those events. It works with your very identity that got created in response to those events. So I think
the deepest thing there is.
The deepest thing there is, right.
The you in you.
The you in you gets really worked and, I would say, challenged with psilocybin, versus MDMA and cannabis never challenged the fundamental you that's there.
Yeah. Do you think that's what ayahuasca is doing too?
I think so.
Yeah, again, that deeper the pathways that make you who you are. Yeah, versus your experiences. Oh, I went through a rape or a trauma, or I was neglected, or the MDMA might target those so well, but the fabric of you is a deeper kind of psychedelic thing.
It's a deeper programming, right? It's a much more core level of programming.
It sounds like that could be scary.
It is scary.
I mean, because
it's not, I wouldn't take it lightly.
Yeah, because when you say psilocybin is an advanced medicine, it sounds like that means a few things. Advanced in that it's probably something that you would use later in the course of treatment, and also it's advanced in that you better have the ego strength that the right person working with you, the right setting and container, and like it's serious stuff. Yeah.
And also very much determined by those things that you just said, like the right person, the right container, because, this is sold mostly to vacationing, party seeking, like people, kids go to Amsterdam and with their friends and then have a weekend of psilocybin walking around the canals and everything like that. And so, that's the recreational use of it. And obviously, like, none of its true, like, miraculous medicinal properties come out in that context. And there's other contexts there. So I think there's, the recreational context, the ceremonial context, group psilocybin. But I would say that if you are really looking to psilocybin for mental health purposes, that the foundation needs to be in place, and then B, the context is really important. I don't think a group setting is at all appropriate for sort of the depth and focus that's needed to do really deep individual psychedelic work with psilocybin. I'm not saying great things don't happen in groups, and certainly, like, wonderful things happen in ceremony where, you're having this transpersonal existential reconciliation with the universe, things like that, right? Very, very necessary, important things. But if you're going to go deep with your personal history and your symptoms and what's going on there, that really requires an individual focus.
Yeah. I wonder do you have an opinion? I know this is being studied now, but it's psilocybin for treatment-resistant depression. I'm wondering if it's going to turn out, if in fact it's effective, if it matters, if it's inner work, or if it could be, outer work, like in nature, enjoying the beauty and wonder, and that there's just something about the psilocybin molecule that's activating serotonin 2A or whatever that's has an antidepressant effect, versus I think what you're talking about more, which is like the deep psychological kind of personality structural attachment work that you might do. But I mean, do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the way that Johns Hopkins is looking at it, and the way that like Robin Carhart Harris in the UK is looking at it, is that it really disrupts the default mode network, right? And I think that may just be a way of saying, it's maybe a different way of looking at the same thing, right? That people who are depressed have a very rigid default mode network, and I think not just psilocybin but many psychedelics would disrupt that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Because after that psilocybin special on 60 Minutes last week I've had a number of calls and texts like, hey, Heacock, I want to do psilocybin. Can we do that next week?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
No.
Not so much.
No, not so much. Could we hear about your experience in the Netherlands?
Sure. Yeah. This was a really big one for me. It was so since 2011, my mom had been working with, dealing with endometrial cancer, and the survival, and she was in like really cutting edge clinical trials and things like that. And so, the survival rates for that type of cancer is 5 years. So my mom beat the odds with that. But in the beginning part of 2019, that's when I went to Amsterdam for the pilot program there. And then I was getting news from my mom and from home that like she was getting more ill. She had been to the ER a couple of times, and so she was saying, "I think you need to come home," And so I did. We sort of shut things down a little bit early there, but knowing what I was going into, likely. There were a couple of, I found 2 clinicians that I felt good about, that I asked if they would lead me through a psilocybin session. And
you've never done a guided one?
No, I had done, I had done my own while I was there a little bit, but it was just sort of like a relatively low dose, that kind of thing, right? Because I didn't feel like I had the right container for it, so I didn't want to go whole hog with it. And so my system was prepped, right? So basically, I think, this whole idea of psychedelics for the dying, but I think it's also psychedelics for people around those who are dying, right? And because dying is an altered state of consciousness, it's an incredible period of time in our life cycle. And for me, every piece of childhood that was incomplete, that was had question marks around it, was coming to the surface around, the potential of my mom's imminent death. And so that was my internal setting, my internal context for what this session was going to be about, right? So these 2, there were a couple, they showed up. And interestingly enough, she was clinically trained, right? And so she had all the education around what's going on. He was not clinically trained, but he had a solid childhood. Okay, so this is going to be an interesting point.
He got the better. He got the better deck.
He got the better deck. I would take the solid childhood over the clinical training any day. Baby A.
Yeah.
And so. So we went in, right? And, initially, and this was a full dose session. And so they use psychedelic truffles in the Netherlands. And so, it was probably equivalent to like a 4-gram dose of dried mushrooms.
Big dose. Big dose.
Pretty solid dose. Yeah. And so my system was going in. I was like recognizing it. I was feeling the anxiety in my body and letting it through. And the entire time I was watching, I was looking at that, and then behind that, something big was rising up that I hadn't noticed at all. And then I was realizing, like, oh no, this is the psilocybin coming on. And all of a sudden, I ripped off my eye shades, and I was terrified. And the sitters, I was like, I want this to end. I want this to end. I need this to end. And it was like, I was shaking, and my eyes were shaking, and I just realized, like, this is not gonna. Okay,
that rocket's already taken off.
That rocket's taken off. Yeah. And so, so I put my eye shades back on. I was like, okay, let's do this, right? And so initially,
and they're both with you.
They're both with me. They're both with me. Yeah, and they, and so. Should I just walk you through the story of
please
it?
Do.
Okay, edit as you see fit. So initially, it took me to this like staging area, right? Where it was just like, it was funny because I've been taking the public transportation in Amsterdam all this time, and I loved it. And so it just took me to the public transit station, just like, are you going to get on this train or are you not going to get on this train? And so I was like, okay, well, this is something, I guess, but I was expecting more.
If you take 6 gram equivalent, you get a private jet.
Yeah, I know. I had to do public transit on 4. And so, and then so at some point, and so more going in, and then it really did turn on, right? So initially, what I saw was pretty transpersonal, right? So I'm working with this idea of like death of a very person that I love, and in space, in the darkness of space, I saw this infinity symbol, like a giant figure 8, like spanning galaxies, just sitting there, and like half of it was cloaked in shadow and the other half was in light. And the half that was in light, there were all these beings on there that were lit up, and I could see them sort of moving this course around this figure 8, and they were moving into life, through life, and then into death, and then through death, and then back into life, right? So this kind of thing, it just like showed me, okay, that's something that I saw, right? And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then, so basically, then I'm sure there's details I'm not remembering, but then I remember moving to sort of an animal incarnation piece where I could just, in my mind's eye, I was just cycling through all sorts of different life forms, insect life forms, plant life, all sorts of just very quick flashes of like different faces and teeth and, ways of eating and all sorts of life processes happening. And I told that to my sitters, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're tapped into the DNA stream." Like, all right, I'll go with it.
It's sort of a Jungian thing.
A Jungian thing, right? Yeah. But whatever it was, they completely normalized it, and I was like, okay, so this is interesting. And then I found myself not just from a observer position, but actually finding myself feeling like I'm becoming different types of life forms, right? And like my body, like it's like sprouting wings and things like that. And so I'm going into this terrified, upset at what's happening with my mom, all of this stuff. And at one point, so I noticed that the music is incredible here. The music with psilocybin sets the stage for everything, right? And so we had a particular set of music going on where the sort of the bright light type of music would send me into the bright light, and it wouldn't tell my mind what precisely to come up with. It would just be something in the ballpark of that light and the goodness, and I heard the medicine ask me, well, do you want wings? And I was like, yes. How would you not want wings? I was like, oh my God, like this is what it's like.
Wow.
It was like, there's nothing it was like, I'll just say. So that was fantastic, right? And then the music shifts, right? And then it goes to dark tones, the deeper tones, right? And I'm telling you, Craig, like, again, it's not going to tell you what comes up in the darkness. It just turns you towards the darkness, right? And so at some point, I'll just get to sort of the core of what I do remember here, which was that I could feel my own personal incarnation. I could feel myself being born. I could feel myself like all these memories of like physical memories, body memories of like shaking and shuddering and being born in that whole entire process. And one of the things that I clearly remembered about that was an entire world that was just couldn't give a shit that I was there, just didn't care at all that I showed up here, right? And I was just like noticing this, like, there's a way in which sort of psychedelic medicines, classic psychedelic tryptamines like psilocybin, turns experiences that we've had into image, or turns it into a metaphor that you can then feel and relate to. So I was just feeling this damaged love that was between me and my mom, and that since then, there was not going to be room or possibility for anything else until this thing was healed, right? And so, the first side of it that I saw that I'd already known about was that, I wasn't loved, and this is what it really feels like. This is how much that actually hurts, right? And my body could really engage with this and go through these big shudders and shakes and convulsions and things like that. And and the relationship here was so important. This is where I think it goes well beyond just what we classically think of as sitting for a client going into a psychedelic therapy session. Like most of the time people will put on eye shades and put on headphones and then they're having their internal experience. This is such a profoundly relational wound that these two people I were working with had to be really deeply involved. I pulled them into it, right? And so
both physically involved with you. Were you talking to them too?
I was talking to them, interacting with them, and then very physically involved, right? Yeah. So there was you could not stay out of the muck if you were in that room with me, And so
these were not Craigslist sitters for minimum wage. These were people that knew what they were doing.
They were doing this, and I felt really good about them. So Kuhn, the male therapist there, he was basically wrapped around me. It was like it was me. I was curled into this fetal position, and his body was kind of curled around me. And I put him there. I positioned him. I was like, I need this around me, that kind of thing, right? And when my body would go into these convulsions around processing not love, right? And he was the container. His system was the container holding that in place. If he wasn't that container, I don't know how this would have gone. Right? And now the flip side,
because he was both the emotional and the physical container.
Yeah. And he worked. He worked his ass off in that session. So these waves these processing waves would come up in my body like periodically. They weren't there constantly. And so when they would come up and we could tell like, here comes this piece, right? And then I could feel his body preparing to be the container, to receive that kind of like hold somebody that's going through that much charge, right? So it was a godsend, right? Now the flip side was Patricia, who Patricia's clinically trained. Kuhn was not, right? But I think Kuhn had that solid baby A childhood, and his system just sort of knew what to do, and my system had enough of that foundational healing ego integrity piece that it wasn't just random firings of things. It all kind of was coherent and made sense to me. So I could tell him, this is what is needed here. This is what's happening, right? That kind of thing. And he could respond to that very well. I think Patricia, to this day, I don't know if Patricia had a profound wounding in her childhood or if this was a purposeful clinical intervention. But so I would say, so this is enough of the masculine. And now this is dad, right? And now I'm going to go over to mom, right? And she couldn't do it. Like she could not be that container. I couldn't wrap her around me. I couldn't get her to sort of hold this process. And again, I don't know if that was on purpose.
I wonder if she's a mother.
I don't think she's a mom. I don't think she's a mom. And but again, I don't know if that was a purposeful thing or if that was like a purposeful intervention or if I was just hitting sort of a block. That would seem
kind of sadistically purposeful.
But it was so incredibly useful. I mean, it allowed me to feel this wound so acutely. It was like, this is not being met here. Oh God, this hurts. And so, But so I had both. I had the real, the masculine is holding and the feminine can't, right? So it ended up being a fantastic container for this process. And, but then the thing that sort of turned on at one point that I really didn't expect was the reverse, which is that, we all know that, children need love from their parents. What I didn't realize in my system was how much of a need it is for children to be able to love their parents, for children to be able to express love. And I finally saw that and felt that both sides of that were broken, in my system, right? So, and the way that it manifested was just like this vision, the seeing and feeling of this iceberg emanating from my chest, like just cold, frozen love, right? and it was going nowhere, and it hurt like hell for that to be there. And of course, more body convulsions, more, once it showed up through this subconscious arising, through this medicine, then my body knew what to do with it. My body could engage it, it could handle it, it could process
this had never
it.
come up in the MDMA work.
Never. It was way too deep.
It's too deep to get to this cold iceberg.
Nothing ever touched the iceberg. It was just such a deeply profound protected wound, right? And I also think that if I wasn't working with these people, that wouldn't have come up either, right? So,
did you get to process? I don't mean to skip ahead. Did you get to process with her afterwards your experience of her not giving you? Yeah,
I did. Yeah, and I said, I don't want to know the answer to this question, but this is what it felt like, But something that did like also cropped up after all of these pieces had gone through. The medicine went back and then said, okay, let's redo so many of these pieces in childhood. Let's literally, Craig, I cannot describe to you like how much it looked like. It was like, it wasn't me as with a 47-year-old's adult conscious mind going back and imagining what it was like to be a child, or imagining what it was like to be a baby or an infant, right? It was going back and looking through those eyes that, this is what the world felt like for the first time. This is what touching another human hand felt like for the first time. This is what, like Kuhn's hand, I was just gripped onto him, right? And I was just like made contact with the back of his hand. I was just kissing the back of his hand. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the world. This is life. And it's here. I felt like I was becoming more and more sensitive to the existence of life. And so it was just replaying all of this in ways that I could actually feel it this time in a corrective way, as opposed to already having gone into that dissociative, numb, protective place. And then there's no life to be felt there at all. Right? So, but I mean, it was miraculous. It was, yeah.
Wow. And how did that change then not just the final days with your mom, but also grieving her death?
Oh my God. Yeah. So that's a whole other part of this story, which was, very powerful experience. And then, going through so much. And then I show up in Maryland and I'm there for the last 2 months of my mom's life. And one thing that it did was I was not dissociating when I was with her at all.
Could you love her?
I could love her. I could love every piece of this person. And my goal, not just like a top-down goal, but a real, like a rising, this is in my bones, is I'm going to send this person out with as much love as I possibly can. Right? Like hold every piece of her experience, hold every piece of her fear that's coming up as she's doing this. And there's no way I could have done that if this process hadn't happened beforehand.
Yeah. I wonder if she could feel it. I hope she could.
I think she could. Yeah. I think she could. And it was hard for me to feel that she could feel it. But, I mean, there's times where she said things that she'd never said in her life, things that she'd never allowed in her life, because, she had that same love wound early on, but without the benefit of like really like sophisticated therapy or psychedelic work. So her system just went through its entire life without being able to love or express love very well, except to pets. She had that too, which, by the way, now I have her geriatric cat, who I love.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the most deeply wounded, traumatized people I work with have a profound connection to animals. Yeah. And what about now in the grieving period, given all the work that you've done and extracting, cracking open this iceberg.
Yeah.
What's that been like these last few months?
Well, it's still been really intense, even though I was probably associated and not dissociated for the vast majority of the time I was with my mom. There were still parts of it that were really, really hard and really big and unbearable. And, you just cannot bear to see somebody that you love going through this. So since then, I have gone into some level of dissociation, I think just around those events, not around childhood, but around these adult events. So I feel like, I need another session. But no, it was intense. It was like a lot of sort of inward isolation, not being able to feel, a lot of numbing out. And I feel like I've been coming out of it pretty naturally. It's probably been like 5-6 months now. But yeah, I think, going to Amsterdam for another psilocybin session would be really useful at this point.
I just want to share one thing with listeners is I've really only known you in these latest stages, last few years of healing, but you have a lot of love. There's so much love in you. And it's been amazing to sit here with you. When I thought about starting this podcast months ago, I thought I have to have Saj on. That will be the best. So thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome, Craig. You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. This has been wonderful. Yeah.
We would love to hear what you like about Back from the Abyss, what you want to hear more of, maybe what you want to hear less of, which episodes have most spoken to you. So please go to our website, bftapodcast.com, and send us a message with your feedback. And please rate us on iTunes right now. This will take less than a minute and help us spread these stories far and wide.